I've played a lot of games on the NES over the course of tons of different unique genres, but one genre that always stands out are ones that pick my brain: puzzle games. Growing up, Tetris was my grandmother's favorite game, and from that point, I began exploring different types of puzzle games, ones that made me think, ones that required more than just a button push. And that's the topic of today's episode, the 10 best NES puzzle games. Hopefully you see a game you've heard of before, and if you have, maybe this will take you down memory lane. Let's begin. We talk so often about movie games. They tend to be roasted nutsack. That's just how they were. But for some weird reason, video games based on game shows, they weren't that bad. Maybe you disagree. Sue me. But I actually love many of the NES game show adaptations. They're simple, they don't overstay their welcome, and that's a good thing. Wheel of Fortune by Game Tech is a fine example of that, but it's also a wonderful puzzle game. Much like the TV show, we have a prompt, we spin the wheel, we guess a letter, and if we want to, we can buy a vowel. The clues aren't too isolated to idioms or societal norms, like Jeopardy or Family Feud tended to be, meaning that you didn't necessarily need advanced knowledge of culture at the time, you could just go in and have fun with it. It was also released 4 different times. We had the traditional Wheel of Fortune, Family Edition, Junior Edition, and then the final version was Wheel of Fortune featuring Vanna White, which I can't vouch for. I don't like it. There's something weird about it. Wheel of Fortune not only continues to be a wonderful show, the game lineage still continues to this day, with the most recent one being Wheel of Fortune for modern consoles in 2017. Lolo is a legacy franchise from HAL Labs. Originally called Eggerland Mystery and originating on the PC Spectrum, it's one of the earliest games from HAL Labs. Now this series was released in a strange way. In Japan, there were 5 Lolo games for the Famicom. In the US, we had 3 games. Now bear in mind, 2 of them, Adventures of Lolo 1 and 2, share a common title but are different in puzzle design. The reason that is because the US Adventures of Lolo 1 is actually a compilation of the puzzles found in the 2nd and 3rd Famicom Lolo titles, Eggerland Meikyo no Fukatsu and Eggerland Sozo e no Tabadachi. So when it came time to release Adventures of Lolo No. 1 in Japan, they were different. There was no reason to rehash the levels that were already available on the Famicom. But we're talking about the 3rd NES game, The Adventures of Lolo 3, which to me, it's really cool. Traditionally, we only have Lolo going through a shit ton of floors, collecting hearts and dealing with obstacles, but with 3, we had the ability to play as either Lala or Lolo. We had cutscenes, an entire training area, and when we pushed select, we could give up on a stage. If you tried that in a previous game, you would die and you would lose a life. But worry not, there are no lives in this one. You can simply enjoy the puzzles at your own pace, without the threat of gaming over. The Lolo franchise still continues to this day, with the most recent being Revival Eggerland, a remake of Eggerland for Windows 95. Being raised in the presence of a badass grandmother playing Tetris naturally gravitated me to games that involved things slowly falling down. I can't explain it, but when I play games that involve that aspect of puzzles, I feel at home, I feel at peace. Which when you have PTSD from the military, peace is hard to find. During the day you're tired and at night the nightmares come, so there's never a moment where you can feel secure, and puzzle games like Dr. Mario do that for me. Now, in comparison to other games that have objects falling down that require rearranging, this is probably my least favorite, because it's so easy to paint yourself into a corner, and it's really hard to clear out the junk, if that makes sense. Puyo Puyo was the same thing to me, but I do like Dr. Mario. For anyone who's never played it, Mario is a doctor and we have to clear viruses by matching them with the same color pills, which would normally be fine. But these pills have different color combinations, so you need to choose which one you want to use and which one to kind of put to the side. It's not a bad game, certainly not on a list I would avoid, but in comparison to the other stuff, this is pretty solid. This one might have you scratching your head, but I actually found some strange charm in it. For those of you who grew up watching Nickelodeon, this show was the titties, right? We had 2 pairs of kids who competed against each other in trivia. When you were asked a question, you could either answer it or you could dare the other team. There was a dual purpose to this. Number 1, You wanted more money because you knew the answer, or 2, you didn't know the answer and in some ways it was like a bluff, right? But the other team could do the same thing. They could double dare the question back to you. And if you didn't know the answer, you could request a physical challenge, which usually consisted of severely unhinged yet hilarious challenges that were sure to make you laugh or disgust you. Either way, the NES adaptation wasn't that bad. I do prefer the trivia because the physical challenges can be wonky, but once you learn the controls, that's it. I love this show. Mark Summers is one of the hosts that you just never forget, and while the series was revived in 2018, it didn't have the same charm as it did in the 90s. We loved that slime. This game is pretty fucking cool. Pipe Mania actually originated on the Amiga. It was developed by the assembly line and then ported to other computers and consoles by way of Lucasfilm's games. Now, the original PC version, it isn't that great. In fact, if I played the original Windows 3X version, it mostly consists of connecting a long pipe to make the maximum path for the water to flow, but the NES version, known as Pipe Dream, mixes it up a little bit. We have multiple layers of pipes that we can lay out, and if we want to, we can destroy the previous pipe to change to a more practical one. We can't choose what pipes we get, so we have to constantly be setting them down, breaking old ones, and manipulating them in such a way that we can create 2 different layers of pipes. It's really hard to explain with words, but this one was damn close to making the underrated NES games list. It's been copied many times, and it's been implemented as minigames. Yeah, you ever played BioShock? Do you remember the hacking minigame? That's Pipe Dream. Also, fun fact, there was a PS1 remake of this. It was known as Pipe Dreams 3D, but I've yet to play it. Maybe someday I will. I reference this game a lot because it's a lofty little time waster from Irem that really doesn't overstay its welcome. Many times when we play puzzle games, especially ones that have a character we control, we're what's considered a helpless protagonist, and I don't like that. Kickle in this game is capable of breathing ice infinitely, which turns enemies into blocks, which we can either use as weapons or plug holes in the ice. Our whole objective is to collect all of these dream bags, and the one big thing I love about it is that it's fun. It's just good, clean fun. There are quite a few levels, but it isn't an astronomical amount of levels. It's just enough to maintain a wonderful balance of thinking and energy consumption. And if you don't know what I mean, play more of an advanced puzzle game on the NES. You'll feel drained after a while. Lode Runner actually did that for me, but I still like it. If you want an underrated NES game period, look no further than Kickle Cubicle. Jeopardy! I love this show. I remember making my grandmother think I was some Mensa kid because I always got the questions right on Kids Jeopardy, but no, they were easy. After all, it was for kids. Jeopardy is one of those shows that always seem to be there, you know, kind of like the Wheel of Fortune, The Price is Right, Press Your Luck. And some of my favorite memories in my life involved me sitting there with my grandparents playing trivia. It was a simpler time for me. I even rented the PS1 game from Blockbuster, and me and my grandfather played it together. And that is one of 3 times in my life where I had that luxury. One of the core memories I have is my grandfather belly laughing during the loading screens because you can see Alex Trebek's nose hairs so prominently sticking out. But this is the NES version, and I think it's wonderful. It's a solid game, but sometimes it can be unfair. Some of the answers we contend with involve relevant source material, and as a kid of the 90s, playing a game with a demographic aimed for the 80s prior, it can be tough to enjoy. I still added it to this list though because it is fun, period. It is fun, and that's all I wanted. Shout out to Alex Trebek for making us all feel a little bit smarter at the end of the day. Fuck cancer. You know Tetris? Of course you do. We all do, but there are many more Tris games, if that makes sense. Like Well-Tris, Word-Tris, or even Face ... Tris 3. But there's another one that's pretty awesome. Hattress. The whole idea of Hattress is that we take away the formula that made Tetris awesome and replace it with a stacking puzzle. Hats will fall down from the top of the screen and we stack 5 before they are removed from the playing area. Now you might think that this is stupid, and yeah, it might be, but to me this is an awesome time waster. I had a blast with it. It's simple, it's direct, it's 100% the idea of a fun puzzle game from the master of puzzle games in the industry, and I'll die on that hill. I can't name another puzzle game designer that comes anywhere close to the badassery of Alexei Pajitnov. Now this game might look easy, but I assure you, it gets difficult rather quickly. This is one to own though. Give it a shake, you might like it. This game is fucking awesome, and I do mean fucking awesome. Fire and Ice is a Tecmo game, and I've played so many Tecmo games, so when I see one, I'm mentally prepared to get kicked in the nuts by Lou Groza, right? Ninja Gaiden alone is a perfect example of that. But Tecmo did quite a few games on the NES, some of which were puzzle games like Solomon's Key, but for the most part, they are known for Ninja Gaiden. Fire and Ice though, beautiful game, almost verging on the next generation if you ask me. It almost made the top 10 best looking NES list, but it was beat out by Metal Storm, which if you ask me, I may have made a mistake, because it probably should have been on there. One thing I do want to bring up is that this game is a prequel to Solomon's Key, and we play as Dana, who is sent by the Queen of Fairies to defend everybody from the evil wizard Drudel, who's being a cuckopotamus Rex. Our whole job is to use ice magic to destroy flames. We can manipulate ice by removing it, kicking it, and even casting spells to generate ice blocks. We can kick the ice to put out even more fires, and that's really our only objective. As the game goes on, it does get more difficult, but I was captivated by this one. I hope to play it fully one day. To me, this game holds a very important aspect of my life. Tetris is a simple game created by a man who was critically shit on by the game industry. I will never forgive EA, Nintendo, Spectrum Holobyte, or any company that treated Mr. Pajitnov poorly. That man created a game, right, that took the world by storm at a time where the Soviet Union took everything from you, your identity, your ideas. They didn't belong to you. But this game was one that everyone could play, irrelevant to your skill level. He took advantage of the dopamine of a simple task completion, and to this day, we call it the Tetris effect. A dedication, effort, and concentration to an activity that affects us in ways that we can't comprehend, but can observe in some ways. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, Tetris was always a part of my life. My earliest memories of gaming involve watching my grandmother absolutely power fucking Tetris Gold into oblivion. The day I was able to provide her with a working copy of it on DOSBox in 2020 was a magical day for me. She never missed a beat. Made it to level 9 the first time after not playing it for 15 years. We still challenge each other to Tetris games every single time we meet up, and to me, it's the best puzzle game on the NES. And guess what? There's 2 versions. I do prefer Nintendo's take because to me, the Tengen version is way too easy. Usually the win condition I apply to myself when I play Tetris is to achieve 100 lines, but you can get like 200 lines in Tengen's version before it gets too difficult. But for those who haven't played it, what is it? Well, we have Tetraminos. They're a grouping of 7 different pieces: the line piece, L block, reverse L block, square, squiggly, reverse squiggly, and the T block. Our whole objective is to clear lines by compacting these pieces together, and if we clear 4 lines simultaneously, we create a Tetris, and that's worth 800 points, at least in the version I played. It's addicting, it's fun, and I love it. I'll always love it. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Are there any puzzle games on the NES that stood out to you? Feel free to tell us down below in the comments. Who knows, maybe you'll pave the way for someone else to create an amazing memory for themselves. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home. We're a group of phenomenal individuals who love remembering a time when life was just a little bit easier to live. Personally, I'd love to have you here. Finally, the most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortefyre out.